Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of How to Live to 200. On today's episode, I had the opportunity to connect with Sonia Arrison, a Silicon Valley-based author, entrepreneur, and investor focused on longevity. Her most recent book is 100 Plus, How the Coming Age of Longevity Will Change Everything, from careers and relationships to family and faith, where the discussion spans from both scientific advancements and the social and economic and cultural impacts of radical life extension. She's also the founder of 100 Plus Capital, an angel investing group that invests in broadly defined longevity startups from biology to food to clean water. She's a co-founder at Singularity University, one of my favorites, and a board member at the Thiel Foundation. So she's highly networked into the people creating the future. In this episode, we dig into the most exciting advancements in the space, what types of companies she wants to see as an investor, how software and AI will change health, senolytics, or how dead cells might be killing us, what types of longevity conversations she hears while drinking cocktails with Silicon Valley elite, and what she knows about Peter Thiel and parabiosis, aka how young people's blood can make us younger. I really enjoyed my conversation with Sonia, and I hope you do too. And now, this is How to Live to 200. Sonia, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I really enjoyed your book, especially the parts at the beginning where you talked about all the people who've been working on this category for such a long time. I'm really interested in what motivated you ultimately to write a book in the first place.
Well, two things, I think. I mean, one thing is that I had grandparents who lived a long time and were very healthy until the very end. And watching them growing up, I always wanted to be like that. And so, and I noticed that other older people were not like that. And so then the question was always in my mind, how did they get to be like that and not others? And so I sort of always had this fascination with longevity and health in older ages. And then when it came to the book, I kind of got inspired to look deeper into longevity when I flipped on the TV one night, and there was this show called the Swan, which was a reality show, one of the very first reality shows where they sort of took people who thought that they needed help in their lives, and they would if they wanted to look better, and so they'd get them dental work or redo their hair, redo their wardrobe, help them lose weight. All these things to make them feel better about themselves. And it got me, I watched this and I saw them at the very end of the two of the people on the show at the very end of the show crying because they were so happy that they were able to use these technologies to change their life. And I thought, well, I wonder what other technologies you could use to change your life. And I started digging around and I found really hard technologies like nanotechnology and, other types of biotechnologies that could really make you healthier, like not just make you look better, but make you healthier. And that got me very excited. And I realized that we were on the cusp of a revolution, a longevity revolution that most people didn't know about, and very few people were talking about it. And so that's where the idea for my book 100 Plus came in.
And since you wrote that, published in 2011, what things have changed the most from that time to now?
The science has changed the most. The science chapter was practically out of date the minute I finished writing it, because the science in this area is really moving. I mean, in some cases, biotech is moving faster than Moore's law. I mean, it's just really incredible how much is being done in the longevity area. And so that has changed a lot. I think the other chapters on, let's say, the environment or religion or family relationships, those haven't changed as much because we haven't sort of hit that point yet where we are living to be, say, my theory was we could live, it's not crazy to say that we can live someday to 150 in a relatively healthy state. And we haven't quite hit that yet. And because of that, the sociological and economic and environment, all of those kind of chapters are still incredibly relevant. It's the science that has really changed. And, of course, that's what's pushing the revolution.
What things are you surprised of that may have gone a lot slower? You would have imagined in 2011 that certain things would have been commonplace. Which things have gone a lot slower than you thought?
Well, the stuff that was already in human trials back then I thought that because it was already in human clinical trials and was already showing results, positive results, that it was working, that, well, then it couldn't be too long before it hits the clinic and everybody can have access to these things. Like, for instance, growing a new trachea for somebody who's somehow had disease or something to damage their trachea. That was done a very long time ago in human beings, and had great results. And, it's taking it takes a long time for those things to translate from lab to clinic. And so it's somewhat disappointing that it's taken so long.
What do you think the major factors are for slowing those things down?
Well, of course, regulation. There's the FDA. I mean, they have to approve everything, and they have a lot of things to look at, and it takes time, and they have structure, and they have different, hoops that the scientists have to jump through, and so it takes a long time to go through all of that.
If you were starting another company tomorrow, which I guess you work on as an investor, are there things that they would do with the regulation to make it that much better?
You mean the FDA, if they could change things?
Well, certainly if we could change the FDA, but assume the FDA doesn't change, are there things that make companies a lot more effective today at moving things through the FDA process, or is it just sort of fixed no matter how good
yes.
you are?
I think the biggest hack, the biggest way that companies try to get some of their longevity or anti-aging things through the FDA is by aiming their technology at a disease. And it's not a disease that they actually are, they're interested in curing all disease, but it's not that particular disease that they're interested in. It's actually a larger anti-aging play. And it just so happens that it has a great effect for this one particular disease. And if you find an orphan disease, that's even better for the company, because then you can potentially get fast tracked through. And so that's sort of the hack that I see a lot of companies taking, biotech companies.
Interesting. And have you seen changes at the FDA that would be positive for us?
Well, the FDA is showing much more interest in the area of longevity. I think they understand that this is important and they see it as important. But of course, it's hard to change the entire machine, right? The machine was made in an era where we weren't thinking about longevity science, and so that's where everybody is.
Yeah, you recently wrote a great blog post titled "The Longevity Dividend: Why Living Longer is Actually Good for Economic Growth." I wonder if you could expand on that concept.
Right. Yes, I think a lot of people don't think about the economics when they're thinking about longevity. They just sort of think, it's about people wanting to live longer. Well, yes, that's true, and actually wanting to live healthier, not just longer. But health is directly correlated with wealth. And economists know this. There's actually a huge body of literature of in the discipline of economics on how longevity impacts the economy. And so you can look at it from two different levels. Maybe your listeners will be more comfortable looking at it from a micro level, where you think of yourself and you think, well, look, if I'm sick, I can't work, and so if I can't work, I'm more likely to be poor, right? There's a really clear relationship there. And if you're healthy, then you have a greater opportunity to work and be productive and contribute to the economy. And of course, that helps the economy to grow. So that's sort of it on a micro level. And then there's sort of the macro level of, how does a longer lived population affect international competitiveness, for instance. So when I was doing research on this topic for my book, I found a paper by two economists, David Canning and David Bloom, Harvard and Queen's at the time. Those were the institutions they were at. And they took a look at this and said, how does longevity affect international competitiveness? And they did a study and they showed that, if you found two countries that had a relatively similar economy, and there was just a 5-year difference in longevity. So one population lived 5 years longer than the other population. The longer lived society their economy would grow half a percentage point faster than the other economy. Now, that might not sound like a huge amount, but when average annual growth is only about 2%, half a percentage point actually makes a huge difference. So and that's only with 5 years. So imagine if you had a population where they live 10 years longer than the other country, or 20 years longer, or 30 years longer. It might not be a linear relationship, but definitely that impacts international competitiveness. So So going back to the longevity dividend, there's been this movement among some activists in the U.S. saying, look, if we want to keep up the U.S.'s competitive situation in the world economy, we want to be more competitive than other countries. We have to make sure that our population is healthy and long-lived, and so that means that we should focus on helping longevity technologies get rolled out as fast as possible so we can have a healthier population.
And how do you answer the question for someone that says, what is the tax on the planet? So if we all live 20, 30, 50, 150 years longer, and we're all populating the planet, isn't that a huge tax on the planet?
Well, you would think so. But when you start thinking about it, I think there's lots of different ways to think about it because there's many different ways it could tax the planet. But at the same time as technologies are growing to help keep humans healthier longer, those same technologies, nanotech, biotech, can help keep the Earth healthier. So, like for instance, better ways to clean up the environment using nanotech, or better ways to produce energy using like nanos or solar or wind or even sea power. So there's all these different technologies that are being created alongside the longevity technologies that are going to help us take better care of the Earth. Food production, moving food production from farms into the lab will make it much more efficient and much more clean, and not only clean for the food being cleaner for human consumption, but also cleaner for the environment and not producing as much waste. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time, and all of them, from that perspective, should be beneficial.
So this ties a little bit into your work with Singularity University. Maybe you can tell our listeners about what Singularity is, your role, and what they may be doing in this health longevity category.
Right. So Singularity University is actually not a university. It's not just about the singularity, but it's an organization here in California in Mountain View, located at NASA Ames, and we put together a bunch of different programs where we bring together individuals who are interested in trying to figure out how to solve humanity's grand challenges. So how to solve water problems or food problems or power problems, and bring them from all different types of disciplines. So nano, bio, AI, even space and networking, either trying to help people network so they can create companies around these ideas, so they can roll out their ideas in a faster, more efficient way, or we have executive programs where we bring in, executives from big companies all over the world who can learn about how they might change their organizations to sort of better fit with the new reality of new technologies, to try to also help change the world in a positive way.
And that they have a whole health track run by Daniel Kraft.
Right. Yes. Daniel Kraft does a Future Med.
And what are the things that maybe you or Daniel are seeing that has been most exciting over the last year's period of time in this category?
There's so many exciting things when it comes to the health tech. I mean, there's regenerative medicine, there's AI, there's gene therapy, there's so many things. I'm fascinated by the AI stuff. We tend to see a lot of that because of the name Singularity. It attracts AI type people. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff going on there.
Is there a particular company maybe that you've seen that is applying AI in interesting ways in this health longevity category?
There are many companies that are doing it. So like the companies I'm really fascinated with are the ones that are trying to replace repetitive jobs. So like radiology, where, the doctors sit in this dark room and just look at slides over and over again. And, radiologists, most of them are pretty good at their jobs, but a computer can do that so much better. Computers are so much better at pattern recognition. And so having the ability to at some point just have a computer take over those functions and let the people do the interpretation after the fact, but let the rote stuff, the boring stuff, the stuff where humans can make mistakes, let that get taken over by AI. I think that's a fantastic idea. And there's a number of companies in that space trying to do it right now.
So you and I are both investors in the space and interested in doing early seed or angel investing. Tell me a little bit about 100 Plus Capital.
Right. So that's my angel investment firm. I make small investments, 50 to 100K investments in in companies that are doing something in the longevity space. And to me, that's very broad. I mean, it's not just, traditional health tech. It's not just regenerative medicine. It is those things, but it's also sort of the larger picture of, how do we impact human health? And, other than creating new medical technologies to impact human health, there's also things like, how dirty is our water supply? Can we clean up our water? So companies that are cleaning up our water would be interesting to me as a longevity company, or our food supply, or things like that. So it's a larger space than most people might think at first.
Can you tell us about a couple of your most recent investments?
Right. So one of my investments was a hardware company that's doing real-time blood pressure monitoring using radar. I have the two food companies. One of them is a fasting mimicking company, fasting mimicking diet company, where it was created by Walter Longo at USC. It's this 5-day diet where you get to eat food, but it tricks your body into thinking you're not really eating food. So you get the benefits of fasting without the major pain of fasting, which I think is brilliant. And I do it all the time. I do it every 4 months, and it really is epic. It has a huge impact on all my data. I'm data driven. The very first time I did it, I got my blood taken before I did the diet. And then I had my blood taken after I did the diet. And my doctor was just blown away because I don't have high cholesterol, and I don't have any serious issues. And so, she said to me, Sonia, I don't think this diet is really going to have an impact, but I'll humor you anyway and take your blood. And so it was nice that she did that. But when she got the second batch of results after I had done the diet, she couldn't believe it. She called me up. She's like, "This is amazing." Wait, what was it called? And of course, she's getting a bunch of her other patients to do it who really do have big problems. So that's one of the investments I really like.
And I don't think you mentioned the name of either one of those two companies.
The fasting mimicking company is L Nutra, and their product is called Prolon. And the real-time blood pressure monitoring is Blumio.
Very cool. So as an investor living in the Silicon Valley, I imagine you end up being the person at the cocktail parties that people want to come up to and talk to about longevity.
Yes.
What are the topics that people are most interested in? Who are the people who are trying crazy stuff? What are you hearing in that kind of circle? Take us inside one of those events.
Yeah. Now, people are, we were just talking about fasting. People are interested in fasting. I think that's very trendy right now. But I don't mean trendy in the sense that it's going to go away. I mean, the research behind fasting is actually really solid, and it's very good for you to fast. But a lot of people are interested in trying it, and there's different ways to do it. And so, everybody's always wondering how other people are doing it and trying to trade tips and tricks and all of those kind of things. So that comes up a lot at cocktail parties. And then, the microbiome and different types of food you should eat to feed your microbiome. And, should you get vitamins or supplements that are based on your microbiome? And, those are the kind of topics that come up.
What company do you hope comes and pitches you next?
I would like to see an AI company that's doing something that can impact healthcare, like I mentioned, the radiology type thing, something that can help humans make fewer mistakes, because I think that's a big problem in our healthcare system right now. Doctors are overworked, and it happens all the time. So I'd like to see something on AI in healthcare. I would like to see something on senolytics, which is basically sort of a class of drugs or a set of techniques that can help clear old cells from your body that haven't been cleared on their own over time. Normally when a cell dies, your body clears it out. But over time, your body gets less and less efficient at doing that, and they start to build up. And as they build up, they're not replicating, so they're not cancer, but they're not going away either. And they release sort of inflammatory messages into your body, and that's one of the theories for why we age. And so, if we could clear out those cells, that junk, then we'd be a lot healthier in the long run. And so that's an area I'm very interested in. And there's already some companies out there doing it, like Unity Biotechnology is probably the leader in this space. But I think there's room for more and different techniques.
Well, I hope we get it to do a deal together, as I'm now a VC investor in this space as well.
Yes, that would be great.
What are you seeing from a founder perspective? I know here in Seattle, as we look at this whole category, we're finding that while these may be biologically oriented companies, the people who are founding them are coming from computer science or even other more technical disciplines. Are you seeing the same kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the majority of the founders of the companies that are doing work in this space are not biology people. I mean, maybe they're partnered with a biology person, but I see so many different types of people. I mean, from math, from the disciplines of math or electrical engineering or nanotech or really computer science often for the big data stuff, all over the place. Lots of very intelligent people from different disciplines getting involved in longevity, which I think is great.
Yeah, it's very cool. So you sit on the board of the Thiel Foundation,
Yes.
And it's rumored that Peter Thiel is very interested in the category of parabiosis. Maybe you could explain what that is.
Sure. So parabiosis is it's a method of hooking together two animal circulatory systems. So a few years ago, there was a paper published in Nature that showed that when you hook together the circulatory systems, the blood of an old mouse and a young mouse, and let the blood circulate between both of them for a while, the old mouse got a little bit younger. It started to see rejuvenation effects, and the young mouse started to get a little bit older. So there was something in the blood that had an impact on the health of the rodent. And so, it's speculated that maybe it's some kind of protein or some other kind of small molecule that's circulating in the blood that gives signals to the body to either rejuvenate or not rejuvenate. And so it's a very interesting field. And I think Peter is interested in it because he would love to, just like all of us, would love to know, what exactly are those molecules or proteins or whatever it is that's having an impact on either aging or rejuvenation. I mean, are there things that we could add to the human body? Maybe we could make them in the lab where it would have rejuvenating effect, or maybe there's some things in the blood that just need to be removed. And can we create other drugs or other methods to get rid of some of that junk? And so I think Peter's interested in it from that perspective. I'm not sure. I have not heard about him. I don't think he's really, I don't think he'd ever actually tried parabiosis. I don't know. I never heard that he has. But I think the media likes to use it and as a good way to start their articles, and they have lots of vampire jokes and things like that. So it's out there.
Well, I'll take it as a next time we're at the right cocktail party. I'd love to ask him that question.
Right? Yeah. You do that.
So we've talked a lot about the upsides or the potential upsides of living a lot longer. Do you think there are downsides?
Yes, but I don't think they're greater than the greatest downside, which is dying or bad health. But yes, I think as we live longer and healthier, you'll see, say, for instance, more older people in the workforce, of course. And so I think that could probably lead to intergenerational conflicts. You can imagine, being at a company and having a team where there's, a 22-year-old and a 105-year-old, and the 105-year-old is still healthy, and they're on the same team, and they have a completely different sort of lexicon, really, like different cultural references, and I think that may make it more difficult to work together in the future. So I think that's one tension that will come up. And maybe that's not such a big deal, and we can work through that. Maybe something that's a bigger problem is this idea of the haves and the have-nots. And, it's unclear to what extent that will happen. But, you could imagine some countries or even some parts of some countries getting access to longevity technologies. So you have some people who get to live to, 100, 200 years old. And then you have other people who don't have access to those technologies, and they, are stuck at this point where they have an average life expectancy of 80 still. And, and then you really literally could have war breaking out between these two groups of people where, the people who don't get to live long say, hey, we want that, and we're willing to literally fight for our lives. So I think that could be probably the biggest downside. And hopefully that won't happen. I mean, there's different ways to mitigate that. And maybe the technology won't roll out so fast that it looks that way right away.
We're trying a new question, and I'm going to call it the lightning round question. So I'm going to read off a bunch of, I'll say in quotes, treatments. Okay. And I'd love for you to answer very quickly on, okay, I regularly use that. I tried it. I'm not interested at all. I've never heard of it, or I've heard of it, but I think it's hogwash. Okay.
Got it.
Ready? Gut microbiome testing.
I think it's important, but the science is still too early to really give you any good data.
Performance blood testing leading to specific changes in diet or supplementation?
Only if you have very severe deficits. Otherwise, I really do think that's bunk. I have a story to tell on that, by the way. Do you want to hear it?
I'm going to go through my lightning round. I'll come back to your story. IPS cell banking for the future.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts if you can afford it.
Intermittent fasting.
Very good for you. You should definitely do it.
Longer fasting, say greater than 2 to 3 days.
Yep, that's good for you too. Fasting is good for you. As long as you do it right. That's the thing.
Regular sleep tracking, quality,
yeah, very important.
Something like the Oura Ring, which is giving you much more real-time feedback.
Right, I think that's important too. Data is good.
Okay, now we'll get into some more controversial stuff like NAD.
It's still too experimental.
Telomere testing and lengthening.
It doesn't give you the kind of data you're looking for.
Hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Well, it's good for athletes.
Electromuscular stimulation for exercise, EMS.
Yeah, I kind of think that's probably bunk.
PRP.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Plasma or protein-rich plasma, injected either in specific joints for regenerative or even from a cosmetic perspective.
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably in general, that's bunk. Although some of the stem cell clinics, when I was doing research, had some pretty good results. But that it wasn't plasma rich. It was actual stem cells.
Nootropics?
Maybe, but you're messing with homeostasis.
Like modafinil?
No, not good for you.
Brain-computer interfaces?
Well, in the future, we'll probably be doing it. I wouldn't do it now.
Nicotine as an additive?
No.
Heavy metal testing and or removing your amalgams in your mouth?
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Okay, now come back to your story on, I think it was intermittent or performance blood testing.
Right, yes. So I used to do that. I used to get my blood tested every few months to see if I had the right nutrients in my blood, if my vitamin levels were right, and if everything sort of looked how it should. And then my doctor would personalize a vitamin pack for me. And, so I would have this little pack with some fish oils and some multivitamins and some choline and a whole bunch of stuff and vitamin D, things that I was missing, and it wasn't balanced out according to my blood test. And I did this probably for about a year, and then I wrote the book, 100 Plus, and then I went on book tour, and I was way too busy to do any of that kind of stuff. So I wasn't taking any of my vitamins for like a good 6 months. And then after the book tour was over, I came back and had my blood retested. And my doctor called me and said, "Oh, Sonia, what have you been doing? This is incredible. You've never had results like this before." And I realized that, over those few months, even though I wasn't I wasn't eating badly, but I wasn't necessarily eating, all that well because I was on book tour. My body put itself back into homeostasis, and all the vitamins I had been pumping into my body were gone. And I was finally back to my balanced self. And, then I started doing some serious research into it. And, it turns out scientists actually don't know that much about vitamins and the proper levels. And it's all actually it's all pretty weak science. And so getting customized vitamins is really a waste of your money, and probably bad for you, actually.
Now I feel so duped by my care of packet.
I'm sorry. I'm telling you, take a break for 6 months, get your levels tested, and see how it looks.
Yeah, I don't know if you must know of that company. Part of it, I do that because I think it's such a well executed direct to consumer product.
Yeah.
That I'm in some ways, I'm happy to give my money to people who execute products really well. And to the extent that it's null to additive. But it is one of those that I was like, I'm in the experiment, and now I'm like too lazy to go find the email to turn it off, and they just keep showing up every month and all that. And they do such a nice job of my little messages on my pill packs, and it's a really well executed product.
Well, that's great.
If money were no object for you, which maybe it isn't, but if money were no object, what treatment would you do? What therapy might you try that you haven't yet?
I think, for me, I would reword that actually to time, because time is really more of an issue for me. So if time were no object, what would I do? And if that were the case, I would spend a lot more time. There's a lot of really good research that shows that meditation is very good for you, and obviously fasting is good for you. And for me, I have to actually when I do a fast, I have to plan my entire life around the fast, because I try not to go. I have gone to cocktail parties when I'm fasting, but I try not to do that, and I don't, schedule lunches or dinners and any of these things. And so if I had a little bit more time, there's a lot of things I would do just to try to make myself healthier.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about this. I assume you're familiar with the concept of healthy life years.
Right.
Yeah. So for those who might not have heard this, imagine two axes graph. On the x-axis is time, and on the y-axis might be quality of life. And to the extent that we could live every minute, without sickness, without pain, or otherwise, we would, and highly productive and engaged, et cetera, the y-axis would be high. And I think most of us want to maximize the area under the curve and reduce or make the slope very steep at the end. Right? You're living awesome, and then okay, I'm done, and I'm checking out.
Right.
So if I forced you into a choice that said you could live 20% better, so move up the y-axis, but for the same finite amount of time, or stay with your same quality of life and live 20% longer, which would you choose?
Well, I feel like I'm in pretty good health right now, so I would stay with my same quality of health at the moment and take an extra 20%. And then hope that during that extra 20%, some new invention would happen during that time, which would give me another 20%, and so on, and I'd reach escape velocity.
That's fun. Okay, I'm going to ask you the other question, which is sometimes people like myself would be interested in a particular treatment or therapy, but we're worried about the risks.
Right.
So if I could guarantee your safety, and no long-term ill effects, what might you try?
Oh God, I would try almost everything then. If it could be safe, I would try gene therapy. I would do CRISPR stuff. I would do the parabiosis stuff. I wouldn't want to be hooked up to a person, but I would try some kind of protein injections in my blood. I would do a whole bunch of things, as long as I didn't think I was going to get cancer or die or something from doing it.
Yeah, right.
I'm an early adopter when it comes to things that aren't going to kill me.
You run in certain circles, and being an author and being interviewed a lot. For our listeners, what podcasts, books, or other people are you following to sort of learn more about this sort of next generation of approaches? Oh, gosh.
I follow so many different people, and it depends. And I follow so many different spaces too. So, in the longevity space, there's some of the sort of obvious, people to follow, like Aubrey de Grey or James Parrott, Apollo, or the folks at UCSF. And the list goes on and on. Johnson & Johnson's got this big lab now, and they're making a big push into longevity, and lots of people working on Calico, of course, but they're very secretive about it. But lots of people working in longevity.
Where can people find out more about you online?
So I have a website, soniaarrison.com, and you can learn lots about me there. Or if you type my name into Google, many things come up there too.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I look forward to following and learning from you, and hopefully doing a deal with you in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, TA.
You've been listening to another episode of How to Live to 200. Thank you so much for joining me and exploring this world together. I get a ton of help from the L200 crew that includes Lauren Krayinsky and Kevin Kirkpatrick. The theme music is composed by Emmett McCann. Yes, that's my nephew. You can learn more about this and other episodes at our website, livingto200.com, or find us on Twitter or Instagram at howtolivето200, where we post lots of photos of cool things. It's early days for this podcast, so we would appreciate any and all comments or telling a friend or two about what we're doing over here. It might be irresponsible for you to keep it a secret. Until next time, eat right, get lots of sleep, keep good numbers, and be looking around the corner for the next big breakthrough. If we're going to live a long time, we better do it well.